Does it taste like radiator fluid?
It,
Does it taste like radiator fluid, or
it
is
is
it sweet, or
terrible in
what?
taste. It's just pure alcohol. I don't even think it's made from like a, you know, like a wheat, I mean like a grain product.
Rice. It's probably rice-based
Yeah,
alcohol.
I don't know what it is, but it's not the best.
Not the best.
Yeah. Actually, Raj, Venkat's on the call right now. Do you know Venkat? He's the, remember at our SIG meeting at DDW?
Oh, wait. Hold on 1 second, Sam.
Yeah.
Why am I? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can't.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, crap, you're right.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Is that what it is? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah, fortunately their school has got terrible cell service.
Okay.
So I'm going to move a few minutes. So Venkat, yeah, that name's...
Venkat's on the call right now. He's actually the fellow at Hopkins who, remember during the SIG meeting, he presented Mullen's...
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's also super interested, and he's their current interventional fellow.
Okay, because it's interesting because I thought the person presenting was like a postdoc person. No, it was Venkat. Huh?
Yeah, well, Venkat's Hopkins right now. Venkat, are you on the call?
Yes, Sam.
Yeah, you
Hi, Dr. Shah.
Hi, Venkat. How are you? Oh, yeah.
I'm good.
Nice presentation.
Yeah, thank you. We're still working on it. We are having nightmare of an issue with because of the type of data involved and the quantity of data. They're making us some hoops. We're making progress though, and we should be able to start that too far from now.
Got it. It's good.
Yeah.
And Sam, I'm so sorry. Like we should have sent some more notice to people. So that's the reason. Even myself, I forgot about this call, and I just realized that the call was needing to happen, and I just joined.
I mean, that was out on Wednesday.
Yes.
But
yeah. And I'm sending a few messages to other people also to let them know. Up to you, like how we would want to do it. So we can. And let everyone else know, or however you prefer.
It can be pretty quick, and it's actually good.
Yep. And Dr. Jha,
you're interested in therapy.
Okay, so you can see me and hear me right now. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we have our site and a YouTube channel and other social media platforms. So very often we kind of do an interview, and everything is recorded, and we post it on all of these platforms so that others can see. So even though we don't have an audience right now, people should still be able to access it eventually.
Actually, most people actually access it through the recording. Yeah.
Okay.
Raj, do you want to get started then?
Yeah, sure. So now I just want to double check, but you can hear me right now? Okay, all right. So I think that sorry, I'm kind of in a car, but not driving, so safe, I think. So I think that well, welcome everybody, and I wanted to, or I was asked to, I guess, talk a little bit about the how I got to where I didn't know I was going to go, and the reason I brought it up is I think a lot of us began medical education with sort of preconceived ideas of what we're going to end up doing in the future. And we sort of, within medical training, I think we have not only delayed gratification, but delayed kind of a beginning of a career. And what I mean is that while your colleagues or from your friends from college and even grad school are off living in the real world, we're still sort of sheltered in our residencies and our fellowships. We're sheltered from reality to some degree. So our interactions with mentors and those that influence us are somewhat, they're pretty sort of unpredictable, I think. And when I review resumes and CVs for people who are interested in residency and fellowship and faculty positions even, I noticed that a lot of their research and writing is really based perhaps some on their own interests, but perhaps more so based on their mentorship and sort of what their regional and local expertise was. And then that influences them to, you know, get on involved with projects and initiate. So I guess I bring this up because people from fellowships, they come a variety of, and you see the opportunities that are given to you, and they aren't always the opportunities that you thought was going to help you become this expert in pancreas disease or whatever ends up happening in your careers. And different institutions have different strengths and weaknesses. So you take advantage of the strengths that are there, understand what the weaknesses may be, and that might help seek out appropriate mentorship perhaps at other institutions, or help you shape the type of advanced fellowship that you were to proceed with, or GI fellowship. You may not get exactly what you thought you were going to get. Believe in academic medicine and thought you were going to be with somebody that was going to help mentor you, and it turns out they're no longer at the institution that you matched at. And so there are a variety of things that I think come up that influence kind of what you end up doing and where you end up being. And so in my case, I think I started getting interested in the pancreas specifically, and I sort of went on this path of going to medical school before I even was convinced that I wanted to be a doctor. And when I didn't really enjoy medical school that much, frankly. I studied really hard, and I was a good student, but I wouldn't say that I was a stellar student compared to other students in the class. And I wasn't really convinced about the whole idea of medicine until I started doing my clinical rotations. And it was really my clinical rotations that I definitely realized that I was in the right career path. So then the parts of pancreas began actually as second-year students, so before clinical rotations, where we had pathophysiology. I think that was first or second year, I don't remember now. And so it's pathophysiology, and we went over cardiac pathophysiology, which I loved, and I loved pancreology, and both endocrine and exocrine. I found it fascinating. Why? I don't know. I actually have no idea why I took a look into pancreas. In fact, I was asking my professor at the time, because we learned about all these organs that were essential. And it was, and I'll share this with you, because we were literally in the bathroom together at the one urinal and another urinal. I'm not joking. And I go, live without your pancreas as a first or second year med student. And what's interesting, now that I know what I know, I'm a little surprised that he paused and said, oh, that's a really interesting question. I didn't know. He just didn't know how to answer that, which I'm a little surprised by. But this was, more than 20 years ago. So I don't know, maybe we have a better understanding of what we can do with diabetes managed apps. But it was interesting that he gave me response and he started processing it in his mind about the endocrine features, the exocrine, and he kind of came up with the fact that, a lot of this could be supplemented, and which of course is true. And then the downward or downstream kind of effects of not having a pancreas when it comes to labile diabetes and so forth. And insulin pumps weren't quite as common as they are now. especially in adults. In pediatrics, they were juvenile diabetes type 1. They definitely used it. So that sort of became my interest, and then it was sort of reinforced when I was a resident, and I was a resident at the University of working as an intern for that month rotation was David Whitcomb, big pancreas person. And so at the time, his lab had just recently identified the PRSS1 gene for hereditary pancreatitis. And I didn't know the significance of that then. I just saw a lot of positive energy and excitement around it, and a lot of congratulations, Dave, type of stuff. And so he also, interestingly, although he wasn't much of an endoscopist, but he did consult or serve as a consult attending. And it was him, I think, a couple of the fellows at Pittsburgh that really got me interested in GI compared to cardiology, which is the other area that I was interested in. And I found that with with GI, it just most of the attendings were overall just a little happier with what they were doing. And they had really good interactions, I thought. The attending and the fellows had really positive interactions. Cardiology. And probably one of the things realized that in fact, I saw ERCP, but this was with a fluoroscopic scope. So literally, they had me look at the papilla through this little lens, and I'm like, what the hell are they looking at, and why are they so excited about it? Because it was actually a surgeon doing the ERCP, and I didn't understand any of what I was looking at the time. And then, but during my residency, I got a little bit of exposure, very little exposure to the procedure. But I realized that if I wanted to pursue pancreas diseases in my career, that ERCP would be a natural fit. And I also found that I was pretty good with hand-eye coordination, and I was pretty good at was terrible at flex sig actually, because we started learning flex sig as a first-year resident at the VA, first or second year resident, and terrible experience. Whole experience with sigmoidoscopy. Cannot get out of the rectum for the life of me, and people just kept encouraging me, saying, "Look, it's okay. It'll come with time. It'll come with time." And then I did a little research on pancreas stuff when I was a resident, but very little, like nothing compared to I think what the type of things are being done now by residents who are interested in GI. But honestly, I started doing projects as a resident mostly because it seemed like it was something expected of me, and also that it was sort of a not only expected of me, but it's something that helped me get some competitiveness for a GI fellowship. And I think a lot of residents end up doing research based on that principle of, look, you want to show some commitment in an area, you want to get published, and that can help you get competitive. And the reality is that's true. It is true. Like, publishing does help with your competitiveness for fellowship and beyond. And so it can lay a good foundation for that. And people at varying levels of training from medical school to residency to fellowship end up doing that. So I was fortunate to have supportive fellows and faculty to help me through that process. And I actually was thinking about the fact that the ERCP portion of my practice even today was shaped by some early experiences with so I did my residency in Pittsburgh and then did my fellowship in Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati. And it was really the supportive encouragement of the faculty there and some co-fellows that were a year or two ahead of me that sort of helped me kind of keep pushing myself to do more than what I expected myself to do. And I honestly thought I was going to do general endoscopy. I loved general gastroenterology, loved it. And honestly, it was really through my first year fellowship when I just felt like I nailed it. Like, this is exactly what I want to do. There is nothing else in the world I would want to do except GI. It's really reassuring since I started my med school career thinking like, oh my God, is this really what I want to do? And so from that perspective, it was fortunate to be at a smaller GI fellowship that they gave me enough confidence to sort of keep plugging away. And I was pretty good at regular endoscopy, and I didn't realize I was good at it until nurses would give me some of that back. And they say, oh, you're already doing this, you're already doing that. That's great. I'm okay. I just thought that was part of what a natural progression of a fellow was. And then I started doing some ERCP or involved with procedures pretty early on in my fellowship. And times are a little different then. When I applied for advanced fellowship, there were about 7 to 8 advanced fellowship programs, and now they're like 70, 72. And so, so things are a little different. People were learning the skill kind of within the 3-year fellowship, and so you're able to get more hands-on experience as a fellow. And so, and then one of my main attending in Cincinnati was Stephen Martin, who was on faculty there for many years, and he actually trained in Pittsburgh. So he had trained with Bill Silverman and Adam Slifka as well, I think. And so those two sort of influenced him to have a little more of a pancreas interest. And so I wrote a review article on pancreas diseases, mid-90s, that apparently was really well. Write any review article or prepare for a presentation, you become sort of an expert just because you've just combed the literature and you've read it. And when you're writing your first review article, you do way more than you probably need to in that review. And I just loved it. I was fascinated by everything that I was reading about pancreas diseases. In fact, I would go to these little pancreas workshop things, not the kind that, I don't think we even had Pancreas Fest back then, I doubt it. But we had or even if there was a National Pancreas Foundation, I'm not even sure when that started. But we would have at DDW or ACG, there'd be little luncheon breakout sessions. And I remember finding myself going to the ones that were pancreas specific. And so Peter Banks was was a famous pancreatologist in the Harvard system. I think he might be retired now. And he was giving the session, this breakout working luncheon session. I had just seen a patient with severe calcific chronic pancreatitis in my fellowship. And my attending at the time was like, yeah, we don't do anything for these. And this is like 97 or so. And so I went to, and it just was killing me. Like, why are we not doing something about this? And so I had prepared this question that I wanted to ask Peter Banks, this like giant in pancreas diseases. And I was just a lowly fellow, So I went to the session. I was a little shy. I didn't want to embarrass myself with a question. So I tagged him on the way out, and he's rushing to some other session, which I can empathize with now. And and I go, hey, so Dr. Banks, I really would like to know what your, what your impression is. I had this patient that had a markedly dilated pancreatic duct, had multiple pancreatic stones, and he had pain, symptomatic pain. And he's like, we don't do anything with those. We're not even sure that causes symptoms or something like that. And I was like, what? How is that possible? How is it possible that there's nothing that we can do for these stones? But of course, when you comb the literature, the Europeans are already treating these with S-wall. I mean, they have data from the early 90s even, I think. Sam, you probably know that data better than I do now. But it was being done, but like in the US, it was not a very common thing, and we didn't have all the tools necessary. Pancreatoscopy was not a big, that was just getting started, pancreatoscopy, and they were a little electronic scopes that didn't even have a significant working channel. So, so that got me even more interested, like this. How are these experts telling me that? And for me, it was about just it means throughout. I think that some things are innovative that I've done or been involved with has really been because of the I'm not being like idealistic. I'm just telling you that when I've pushed the envelope with interventional stuff related to pancreatic diseases, the first U.S. guided pain gastrostomy that I had done was specifically in a patient post Whipple. The surgeon didn't want to operate. She had a markedly dilated pancreatic duct. This was like 2005, and I'm like, you know what? This is what we have been described in the experience of the U.S. guided intervention.
We are now ready to
Symptomatic, didn't have a good. That's what pushed us. People and help patients. So it's a fairly clinically based pancreatic interest that I've developed. By no means consider myself, find myself leaning toward the expertise of pancreatic disorders based on a clinical interest with ERCP and XCQ drive. Hold on.
And so I think, and then what happened, and I think that most of my research related to pancreatic. Can you hear me okay?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Interest that center that has a pretty large referral base of around region. But the thing that I would have to say is that when I first started here, so I did completed my GI fellowship in Cincinnati, and then I realized that Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Are you there?
Yep.
Okay. So, no, I was just saying that the ability to, or so I completed my fellowship in Cincinnati, but as I was finishing or middle of it, I realized that I needed to get additional training to really be proficient and have a chance at the academic career, which is what I wanted to pursue, primarily because I wanted to get focused on pancreatic diseases, both the clinical and discuss research basis. And so so sorry, just shaky cell service. But I got into advanced fellowship, which is predominantly ERCP fellowship. But the thing about working with Doug is that um, what I gained was much more than I ever expected from advanced fellowship. And I mean, you get the clinical experience with the technical experience, I should say, with ERCP, but he had a really large interest. In fact, if you look at the first paper ever published on pancreatoscopy for PD Stone, he's actually the author of it. There's only about 4 to 6 patients described from the mid 90s. And I didn't know the significance of that. He also had an interest in endoscopy. So I just sort of, it was a little bit by chance that I happened to have a mentor that not only was excellent in ERCP, but had a keen interest on pancreatic diseases, because he was sort of the referral place in Maine and some parts of Canada, even with down New Hampshire, would you'd see patients from that area. Then from there, and that was a fantastic experience, and I published a little more in pancreatic diseases. And then when I joined the faculty at the University of Colorado, I was recruited by Young Chen, who passed away in 2010. But he had an interest, he had interest in all aspects of therapeutic endoscopy. But when I joined in 01, he basically told me, like, look, Raj, you need to really learn EUS. And I got a little defensive, and I thought, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? I learned some EUS in my fellowship. And he said, you know, you kind of learned enough to kind of not realize how much you don't know. And so he took it upon himself, and I supported the idea of training EUS during my faculty position. And so early on, for about 1 to 2 years, I did a fair EUS with mentorship from him, another colleague, and that really helped solidify the clinical or technical, I guess, experience. And then really it became a focus of my interest here in Colorado for the last 18 years, pancreatic disease, because it's the type of stuff that I'm interested in. It's a kind of a niche, because a lot of people don't want to work the pancreas, so it's sort of by default, oh yeah, we can start sending patients to the University of Colorado. So I've really grown that aspect of the practice here in Colorado, primarily based on the fact that people in the community just don't have an interest to pursue those type of diseases. And so it's a little bit out of default that I have in the position that I'm in, because people don't want to manage them, and we end up managing them because others don't want to deal with it, or don't have maybe the infrastructure and the multidisciplinary support. Right, getting in the middle lane. Actually, you did hear. That's right. So that's where I am. And I can tell you the thing I love the most about my mission, and what keeps me going, is related to working with training advanced fellows and 3-year fellows. But we started our advanced fellowship in 2004, and that's really been the best part of my position, because you get to see and train a future generation of endoscopists that have varying interests. And I think, you know, if you have the resources to both patient resources as well as some funding to help with some research areas, then that can go a long way, sometimes reaching outside of your institution to help with some of the, keep going straight. But that type of support with colleagues and fellows and programmatic can help considerably. You take the left in Alameda, First Avenue. Yeah, to go to 50 South Jill Street, right? No. Turbo. Yeah. Oh, I see. You're gonna take a right on Alameda, right? So that's kind of my path. I don't know if you. So I think the idea of, I guess if you were to ask me 25 years ago that I would be an interventional endoscopist at a academic medical center, I would have said, I don't think I would have believed it. And so it's sort of like taking advantage of one opportunity after another. And they weren't all ideal. Like I, in fact, wasn't even sure that I was going to go into GI and all those aspects, even in medical school. So it's sort of a little bit of chance and then taking advantage of opportunities that are given to you. Sometimes failures can lead and open up different doors for you that you didn't realize could be something that you would want to do. And that's why I kind of titled this by saying that to get to where you didn't know you wanted to go, because I didn't really know I wanted to be where I am today, but I'm happy that I've been fortunate with some of those opportunities. And I think taking advantage of any opportunity that comes through, it allows you to grow both clinically, endoscopically, research, all of those aspects. Sometimes it's not even in an area you think that you were wanting to focus on, and it could very well be the thing that you needed to get you to the next step, because it's a long process.
Perfect. I was wondering if you could comment, and you did talk a lot about doing sort of research with other people and building that network. And you've obviously developed a lot of colleagues over your years, including Venkat's mentors, who are Vikesh Singh and Monica Shah. And could you comment on how like young trainees should start developing those kind of networks with other people to do multi-center research?
The multi-center research is a little challenging, I think, because it's so dependent on not only your mentor at your institution, but then all these other institutions that are involved. So I think starting with a project, if you work at a center that has a faculty member that's interested in pancreatic diseases, then that's really good. And, like I said, my first exposure was really a review article. It wasn't even original research in pancreas, although I did a little bit of that as a fellow. Sorry, as a resident. So I think that if you can find a mentor that is willing to spend the time to work with you, even if it's not now as a first, second year fellow, or even as a resident, and that you're fortunate to be able to find a mentor that would have that same interest, and you can grow with it. But I honestly think if you have sort of a haphazard or lukewarm mentor in pancreas, but you have this really, very like energizing and prolific mentor that's something not really pancreas related, I probably would go with the mentor that is going to allow you to be more productive. That would be my advice, because I think that and you can still do a little bit of the pancreas stuff on the side, but then what you could do is you tap in with if your mentor is just lukewarm about pancreas, he or she may be affiliated with another physician at another institution, and then that can allow you to get connections. And part of this is, you go to the National Pancreas Foundation meeting or Pancreas Fest, and you network that way, and that can be helpful. And if you can get your mentor to introduce you to somebody that they know that might help you along. But the reality is that when you're looking at multi-center studies, the people are sort of busy doing their own thing. And, and if they're not running that particular show, then they may not have as much interest in getting too involved. They'll be happy to help out. They might help with some search or some patient contribution, maybe a retrospective review, but it has to be something that they're really interested in as well for them to commit their time. Because think about how busy you are, how busy your mentor is, and then think about trying to triplicate it at other centers. And unfortunately, when it's your project, you're very passionate about it. But whenever you're being asked by some other person about their passionate project, then they may not necessarily share it as much. So part of it is shot selection. And what I mean is that you could have 4 or 5 different things that you want to work on. But understanding which one you should really pursue and double down your time requires some assistance from mentors, either within your institution or out of your institution, to try to help you along that path, to help guide you a little bit in which direction you should take it.
Great, great. Thanks for sharing.
And one thing you can do is actually try to find somebody who is that you can sort of emulate. And I don't mean that it's going to be a perfect fit, but someone that you're like, you know what, the way that he or she interacts with patients, or the way they are publishing this much, or you see them give a talk, or whatever it might be, that opportunity. And I think modeling yourself after mentors like that can help you. You may not achieve everything, or you may exceed what they're doing, but it gives you some benchmark to begin with, to say, oh, this is the path that he or she took, and in order for me to get somewhere near there or exceed it, then I have to do these different steps. And I didn't have quite that type of mentorship, but I had it sort of in spots. Because I don't think I had anyone, like currently what I do, I don't think I have anyone mentor me that's doing what I'm doing now, if that makes sense. So it just tends to be you take advantage of whenever you're given the opportunity. It's going to slow down.
Sure. And speaking of which, so I mean, you've made a lot of contributions to our field in terms of pancreatoscopy and cholangioscopy. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into that and how you sort of developed that into one of your?
Yeah, early on, and unfortunately, I think this is becoming less and less, and I hope it shifts the other way, because early on in my faculty position, I was encouraged by the division chief at the time, and also my section head, Young Chen, that you should try and focus on a specific area and just keep persisting at it. And I think today people are really trying to do a little bit of everything, and I think it dilutes the academic contributions. And I'm not saying anything negative about that, but I think if you're really wanting to stay focused in an area, I think it can, and you stick with it, then I think it can give opportunities to be an expert in something that'll help distinguish you from even your mentor or your co-fellows or whatever it might be. And so that happened to be cholangioscopy and pancreatoscopy for me. I realized with ERCP that this was a route for me to continue to pursue an interest in pancreatic diseases. Yeah, you can. So with pancreatoscopy, I think that was a natural fit to get into that. And so it was persistence. It was persistence, some relationships with industry as well, and then with other colleagues around the country that had interest in it. Because when I started in it, there wasn't spyglass mother-daughter system from Olympus and from Pentax that was not very widely available, and there was no concept of a disposable catheter and all the stuff we benefit with digital cholangioscopy now. And so understanding those things, you realize that you're sort of it was a little bit of a novelty. And that just happened to be a little bit of chance and a little bit of taking advantage of opportunity, because Young Chen was a real pioneer in cholangioscopy. And I think I sort of dug into that and stuck with it and started publishing in it, and then it just kind of took off from there, and I just set in. I have to tell you that cholangioscopy and pancreatoscopy are not my favorite parts of practice. It just happens to be a clinical and a research focus of mine, but it's not like I'm looking on my schedule and seeing a pancreatoscopy with PD Stone and I'm thinking, oh yay, because they're not simple procedures and they're not always fun. They can be, but it can be really challenging too. And so I think overcoming those challenges and seeing success is really what keeps you going. But I don't want people to think that this is like what that's how I spend all of my time. I mean, I do a fair amount of it, but it's not how I spend a majority of my procedural day.
Sure. Venkat, did you want to ask any questions?
Sure, Sam. Dr. Shah, I see you being involved in many of the GI societies. Do you think that trainees and the junior faculty should try to get involved in the GI society activities, and what are the advantages of it, and how does one get involved?
That's actually, I forgot to mention that aspect of the ASG. That involvement helped me shape my career on many levels. And I think as a trainee, I became an ASG member primarily because I wanted to get GIE. And then I think I became a trainee ACG member, which at the time was like $20 or something. And it was just like, are you kidding? This is great. I get a journal for it. And so I think that is how I got involved with the societies for mostly the journal subscriptions. And then as a trainee member, you get discounted registrations at these different big meetings, right? Like DDW and so forth. And of course, so that's a no-brainer. Like everybody should get involved with trainee. And there's so many advantages of getting involved. Yes, getting involved takes more time. It takes personal time away from what you're trying to achieve, maybe at your local institution. It can take away time from research, take away, of course, time from your families and loved ones, and those are sacrifices that you have to be kind of willing to do a little bit of that, because otherwise you just don't have much time in your day to get overly involved. But one of the advantages, the main advantage of getting involved, is you get to meet people. And honestly, it's meeting people and exchanging ideas that keep you in this interest and make you realize whether you're doing. She got it. That's straight up there. So I think as far as committees, I don't know what the fellow opportunities are for like ASG committee work. I think there's a little bit of that. The trainee committee, not every, I imagine, but opportunities. And then as junior faculty, even as a third year, fourth year fellow, if you have the ability to, you need to, even as a fourth year, third or fourth year fellow, having the ability to apply for a committee to get selected all prior to, or the president-elect sort of does this the fall, like basically almost 1 year in advance. And because of that 1 year in advance,
for committee work. And it took me, I started on faculty in 01, and I have to say that I was, I asked, and I even had people that were very involved with ASG send letters of support, and I asked every year. And I actually didn't get a committee for almost 5 years. I applied for 5 years trying to get a committee spot, and finally, like 5 years into my faculty position, that I get on a committee, which is kind of nuts when I think about that now. But so just keep persisting. So even working at a big institution and working with people that were fairly involved in the governing board of ASG and so forth. That wasn't enough. Like I kept, showing what I was publishing, trying to meet people, network, shake hands. It seems kind of weird, but it's necessary to do all those things to try to meet people. And you don't want to be annoying. You don't want to be annoying and overburdened either. But you want people to kind of know who you are. Get some, if you're fortunate enough to get on the podium for a presentation, that's fantastic. If it's a poster and you're presenting, then seek out people and see if people will come by your poster, if they have any questions. And you never know who you're talking to sometimes. It allows you to get an opportunity. They might get impressed with you on the way you've explained your research on something. And it's every little interaction can go a long way and might create an opportunity that you didn't know was going to exist, and maybe not, and help you get to, again, where you didn't think you were going to go.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. That was helpful.
Is that, are we still
and
on?
then I guess just to end in terms of,
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I don't know why I can't hear you. Hold on 1 second.
Can you hear me, Sam?
yeah, I can.
Oh, I don't know if did you guys hear everything? I don't know if I got muted out or not.
Yeah, no, we could hear you. This one is actually a little bit more staticky right now than it was before.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And then I guess
So,
to close,
yeah.
in terms of like a last question, obviously, like Venkat and I are interested in doing kind of this interventional endoscopy route towards pancreatology. But what kind of advice would you give to people who are interested in doing pancreatic endotherapy in terms of their training? What kind of training they should pursue?
Great. That's so important because, doing pancreatic endotherapy is it can be an endpoint. It's not a starting point. And I try to emphasize this when I give talks on pancreatoscopy, for example, or interventional EUS for pancreatic diseases, is that this is on the range of the more difficult. So, you have your TI intubation, right? Terminal ileal intubation is one of the more challenging things that fellows will do, 3-year fellows. And then you get into enteral stenting, esophageal stenting, and then there's enteroscopy somewhere in there maybe. And then for ERCP, I think your patient position is important. We don't talk about it much. Position at the papilla, right? Get that. Your first 20, 30 duodenoscope passages, focus on, even if you're not allowed to cannulate, like focus on that ampulla position. And the complexity, the biliary indications tend to be a little bit more straightforward than the pancreatic indications. So I would say that, go with the areas that you're build on it. It's a bunch of building blocks. And pancreatic end therapy, in my opinion, for interventional EUS and for pancreatic ERCP is toward that end of the breadth of the depth of complexity, and so it's just more difficult. So I would say that learn all these skills and then start getting into the pancreas thereafter. So even as an advanced fellow, you might find that pancreatic endotherapy, you may get less hands-on training in pancreatic endotherapy, but you're getting a lot more with biliary. It could be cannulation for a small bile duct stone. Then it could be stricture and stent placement, right? A distal stricture. Then you get into hilar strictures. And when you start navigating some wires across a hilar stricture, and you're doing that with a little bit of comfort, then pancreatic endotherapy fits in right around there, is the way I look at it. And so it's what I call second semester advanced fellowship of pancreatic endotherapy. Now, prophylactic pancreatic stenting, but even then, people think that's so simple. You just get a wire in the PD and you put a PD stent in to prevent post-TSV pancreatitis. Well, guess what? That can be difficult. It can be difficult to get the wire up into the pancreatic duct deep enough without going into a side branch to get a PD stent in. But take that opportunity, even if the scope is out of your hand, by the time that PD stent's about to go in, be like, wait a minute, with your mentors and say, oh, I know I didn't get access into the PD, or I did earlier, and then now you got in the bowel that we want to put a PD stent in, then just push the PD stent in, like getting that feel of the PD stent and pushing that in. I think that can help. And then the stricture therapy is more challenging with pancreatic and pancreatic stones, or even a complexity above that. But I think it's volume, it's patience, and when the scope isn't in your hand, I think there's a lot that can be learned related to observing how your attending is getting that stent across the stricture. What are their hand movements? What's their left hand doing? What's their right hand doing? Is the right hand just pushing the stent, or is it pulling back on the scope and getting closer to the papilla? And so there's a variety of things that you can learn and be observant as an advanced fellow or a 3-year fellow if you're interested in this, that isn't necessarily with your hand on the scope, but things that you can learn not from the back of the room, but really being kind of in there. And it's a delicate balance, because sometimes in order to watch some of the hand movements, you don't see fluoro really with the endoscopist is the nurse or tech helping, and you don't want to be in their way. So, but anyway, it's a combination of those things. And then take it upon yourselves to review pancreatograms and cholangiograms with your attending. They're busy running around, maybe for like 30 seconds, to have them review the films with you. Make it your initiative. Make it your initiative to learn. And when you make it your initiative, I think attendings recognize that, and they're more interested and willing to take a little time out to teach.
Great. Thank you so much, Raj. Thank you for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it. All right.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Have a good day.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Dr. Shah.
Thanks, Venka.
Hey, Venkat.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey,
You can stop recording.
Sorry, what?
You can stop recording. You can press the button.
How do I don't think I was recording. It says recording.
You were, but it says recording here. I hope we were recording.
Do I just press
pause or stop?
Okay. No, I don't think I was. It says it is, but I don't know who is.
Oh, I hope we were recording. I think it may be in the desktop. Let me check. Yeah, and by the way, regarding the FNA one, by today I should be able to finish off the review part.
Okay.
Resolving the conflicts.
Sure.
Let me quickly make sure that we are stopping the recording here. Okay. Yeah, it's actually recording on my computer.
Okay. I was like, someone's recording. I don't know who.
Yeah. It's Aisha's computer, so it's recording there.
Oh.
And I'm going to